Beginner 650 here with Crazy Cat Airsoft, and today I want to talk about the different types of game styles that you'll find in the Airsoft community. So let's break this down a little more simply. On this side of the spectrum over here, you're going to have more game styles that are going to be more competitive. Things such as Speedsoft, in the most extreme sense, having competitions such as tournaments, can be found over in this section, which is the more competitive style of Airsoft. Now on the other side of Airsoft, we have the more simulation-based scenarios where it's going to be less about competition, more about an experience or acting out a certain role. Now kind of in the middle, you have usually what's called your skirmishes, which tends to actually lean a little bit more towards the competitive side of things. So let's kind of just look far out to this corner over here, and let's talk about the competitive focus of Airsoft. On the more competitive side of Airsoft, you have things such as Speedsoft, which is kind of derived from the paintball version of Speedball. Both of these kind of come from a more competitive focus in which you still have objectives, but they tend to be more capture the flag and are complete elimination of the other team. Now with this, it's going to vary a little bit, but kind of usually what you see is everyone's kind of stripped down into a competition mode where you'll see more people dressing with more competitive style gear, so you don't really see plate carriers, but belts are very common because everything is about that pure competition. You also see some more colorful guns and stuff, and sometimes I've seen where people actually strip the guns down to almost their bare necessities. They may even strip the stock off. So as we go a little bit to the less competitive side, still keeping with that competitive mindset, you have the skirmish. This is kind of the backbone of Airsoft. When most people go out for the first time, they'll be going out to skirmishing. These are going to be a little smaller, about the same size as Speedsoft, and usually they're kind of intermixed at sometimes. The more pure competitive side of Speedsoft would be in the sense where they would be having official tournaments and stuff where it's all about the competition. But as we get a little less serious and start going towards a more relaxed play style, you kind of come with the skirmishers. Now the skirmishers can kind of fall into several different categories. You can, and really what it is that it's a category for everybody. Everyone kind of fits in and everyone kind of performs the same. So the Speedsofters here, who are kind of stripped down, pure competitive, they have a place amongst the skirmish community, or in the sense that maybe they like Speedsoft, but they don't want to play tournaments. They just want to go out and have fun, but that's their play style. They like to be kind of super efficient. And then you can have someone who is doing impressionists or, you know, putting on the military gear. And for the most part, you know, they're doing it for fun. So, and they're a little less competitive, but they like to dress up with the immersion of that. And to them, you know, that's part of the fun, is getting to wear the cries, the plate carriers, having your gun decked out just like something else, and to have it be a kind of a conversation topic off the field to talk about what you've done to your gun and all you've equipped it with. And the skirmishing is kind of, everyone does it, you know. And I'll have more about that, like who should do what. So the skirmisher is pretty much a play style for everybody. Everyone will be happy with it. It's kind of, when it comes to Airsoft, everyone does it. You don't really find somebody who just does the tournaments or just does milsim. Everyone does skirmishing because that's just kind of the origin of it. It's kind of a well-rounded play style for Airsoft, and it's usually where you're going to see a lot more, you know, if I had to really put the skirmisher, I would actually put slightly more towards the competitive, but it's a lot more relaxed, and you can kind of do almost whatever you want. There's usually no magazine restrictions, no uniform restrictions. You know, but it's not as super competitive or super serious where, you know, you have to use the flash mags or you have to use HPA, you know, in order to have fun. It's kind of a free-for-all. It's open play kind of style where, you know, everyone gets a little spread out and it's just not too serious, and it's usually always a good time. Alright, so we've gone from the two more competitive, we have the more serious competitive, maybe with Speedsoft. Then it starts getting laxed up. We get skirmishing. You start seeing more people in the military gear having fun. Now, what happens if we take it a little bit more towards the simulation? What you're going to have are going to be the ops are the big games. Now, most mil sims are going to be an op, but not all ops are going to be a mil sim. So an op is going to be essentially a very large game of airsoft, and instead of lasting about 15 to 20 minutes per game session, an op is usually going to last anywhere from an hour to 2 hours on game sessions, or longer depending on the game set rules. So it's always going to change a little bit. What's going to be a little different about this compared to skirmishing, besides the number of players is going to be larger and the game time is going to be longer, the objectives might change a little bit. You're probably not going to have capture the flag. You may have VIP escort. You may be told you have to capture this certain objective. But the big difference is that there's going to be a bit of a story element to all of it. As you're playing and your game is going on, there's going to be certain small objectives, which is usually going to be a pass-fail kind of thing. You either did it or you didn't. You got to it or you did it. And the story will progress. The staff will actually start telling a story as these events unfold. And it's kind of fun because the difference is it's almost like competitive style of airsoft, the skirmish and the speed soft, which is and the competition side of things. That's a little bit like multiplayer games and video games. When we get into the ops, we're kind of switching gears from multiplayer competitive game now to a more campaign experience that you would find in a game. So overall, I would still say that a op may be, for most people, still enjoyable as opposed to competitive play. People are used to skirmishing or even speed soft may be also interested in an op because of the large scale and the objectives are a little different. Now, as it gets a little bit more towards this storytelling campaign style, you'll usually start running into some restrictions in gameplay. So some examples would be mid-caps only. You know, they're going to try to keep, they don't want everyone full autoing everything. They want to have some sort of ammunition limit, even though some people will come in, kind of like me, with like 12 different mid-cap magazines. It kind of starts getting more restrictive about that. High caps will be banned except for support weapons. They're trying to give those people who are lugging around those heavy support weapons. Even our lightweight M60, that's 14 pounds, is still really heavy compared to everything else. So they're going to start giving value to different play styles. Same with the snipers. They may have limits on how many are allowed on the field. Same with support. So they'll start kind of doing things like that. They'll start kind of maybe adding some more limitations. Sometimes there's uniform codes that one side will be all tam camos and one side will be all green camos or something like that, or they may still use the skirmisher, red band, green band, something like that. It varies a lot, but kind of the big thing is they're starting to add some story element to it all. But in general, it tends to be pretty kind of track oriented, where there is not really, they're not faking the illusion of choice in the game. Other than accomplishing a goal, you're either going down path A or path B. But the story elements are just more playing out as you're playing, and you're having very little true influence on it. It's usually kind of presetted, with a pretty simplistic story where they know if side A wins this game, then we go along this storyline. It's going to play out a lot more like a campaign where you're just going down the track and you're being told a story as events unfold. So it doesn't really quite hit that simulation bug, but it starts to kind of get that feel and kind of that more immersion, more movie-like theatrical appearance. Now, on the last part of the spectrum, we have the simulation games. This is where you'll find a lot of mil-sim. In addition to that is alt-sim, which is alternative simulation, and also sometimes the police sims. So what's going to be a little different with these is that they're going to be more simulation, where I use the analogy of competitive style is very similar to multiplayer in a video game, and then campaign is a little bit more where you get the ops. So milsim is kind of that op variety, but there's an extra twist. So instead of a single player game like Halo where you're pretty much just going down the track, or Call of Duty where it's you don't really have choices, We're going to step away from that, and we're going to actually go a step further to another game, a sandbox game like Fallout, the Elder Scrolls series, so Skyrim, Oblivion for those who play it. Those types of games where your choices matter. The players are actually influencing how the game is coming out. Now, the staff does have some control over it, but for the most part, how things change with a milsim, it tends to be, or a simulation game tends to be different. Now, milsim, police sim, and alt sim are all different variations of these simulation games. So a milsim is a military simulation. This is going to replicate almost real-world events. So it's going to be the classic US versus Russia or North Korean, or maybe setting up at like Iraq or against terrorists, stuff like that. So you'll get these more close to real-world scenarios. Now, an alt sim, this is where things get a little less serious and a little bit kind of more wacky and fun. So these are going to be things that are going to be based maybe on essentially not real world events. So sometimes they'll be based off video games. And there's a few video games out there which a lot of these milsims take their influence from them, especially with multiple different sides and different stories. So you have those kind of fun varieties within there. So you could almost have a alt sim, you know, about on the planet Mars, where you have two big corporations who are colonizing it, and a literal corporate war breaks out. So things like that, where it tends to be a little bit more creative, but at the same time, it's a different flavor of storytelling. And then the police sims is going to be a little more closer to the milsim, but instead this is going to be something like a police force versus the mob or something like that, or you know, a huge crime gang or something like that. So there's a few of those out there too. I participated, I think, in two what were labeled as police sim, and this is something where you want to be careful as an event organizer just to not throw the sim out in there. And I'm pretty sure they didn't advertise it, but it was kind of a police-based story. But it wasn't a simulation because it was still pretty much down this narrow road in terms of storytelling. We really didn't have much influence on terms of how the story played out. Where a sim will, it will actually have a little bit more in the terms of players, of what they do actually has consequences of how the game overall will develop down the road. And that's probably the biggest difference between simulations. Additionally, for durations, a lot of these simulations can vary. Sometimes they run like an op, where they'll have every hour or two, they'll have a break in between. You get to resupply or something more efficiently instead of out in the field. And then some of them will last non-stop for about 24 to 72 hours. So the duration is usually longer, from, you know, 1 to 2 hours compared to a skirmish, all the way up to like several days non-stop. So the duration there, that simulation also is different. So there you have it. Those are the kind of the several main styles of airsoft that you see. It really, if you put it on a spectrum scale, you have one side which is more competition. The other side is more simulation role-playing aspect. So it's kind of what's best, I guess, is probably the question that is asked the most. Well, nothing really is best. It's all about your personal preference and what you like. Not only that, but just because, you know, maybe one month we play at a competitive skirmish, and we play at a milsim at one, doesn't necessarily mean the amount of fun is going to be dictated on the person, and also how well that day actually turned out. Whether the event was good, or if the day of skirmishing was good or not. So it's really about personal preference. And on our team, we actually do have a large variety of preferences, and I actually think we kind of cover a good spectrum. Personally, my wife, she likes skirmishing. That's the game style she likes most. She likes those quick games back to back. My friend, essentially our second in command, Happy, he likes ops, but not necessarily simulation events. And part of that is that he's never been to a simulation event here. And I have, and I really like the simulation events. I like how I get the role play, and it's just not about, you know, not taking out the other guys. It's, you know, about playing out this experience and such. And, you know, walking around in your gear on patrol and not encountering anything is about equally as fun as a firefight. It sounds a little odd, but just kind of that immersion experience is what's kind of fun. And there's no such thing as a one's better than the other. Now there may be one that's better than another for you personally, but not that just because I think milsim is my favorite style of gameplay. Specifically, I like the non-24-hour milsims, the ones that are just a day. So different people on our team have different preferences too, and I think it's very important not to dish one side out of the other. Now, I will say that probably most people who are Speedsoft probably aren't going to like the skirmishing, or not the skirmishing, but won't probably like milsim too much, but they'll be okay with some of the less milsim focused, less role-playing focused games, and go to like some of the general ops where it's just really too big size. It's just like a game with a skirmish which lasts forever and with really large teams. And then as we kind of go there with the skirmishers, they may or may not like some of the milsim kind of thing, and part of that is they just want to go out there and have fun shooting, you know, their friends and other people and stuff like that. And I've run across people who at milsim, they got angry because, well, I'm here to shoot people. Well, it's a milsim. That's not all it's about, you know. That's part of it, but there's a bigger picture here of the immersion of the storytelling that way. I hope this answers some questions on all the different styles of gameplay that you can find in Airsoft. And this is always kind of changing a little bit, so from then on out, you know, things are going to change. Almost all milsims now are considered to be almost all 24-hour events. But when I was doing Airsoft, most milsim events weren't actually 24 hours. They were kind of like once in a blue moon kind of scenario. So try to keep that in mind, that as time goes on, or depending on where your region is, the game style will change. But in general, what you have is two different spectrums. You have the competitive and you have the more simulation based role-playing. So Beginner 650 here, going to sign off. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to post down below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button.